Welcome to the Impact Business Show. I'm your host, Annalise Warren, a marketing agency CEO, business strategist, digital marketing mentor, wife, and mama of 4 little ones. Stay tuned for conversations with successful, purpose-driven business leaders, as well as practical marketing strategies that you can action right away. We are here to help you master your marketing, build your business, and change the world. So let's get into it. Today on the show, I am speaking with Amanda Campbell. As a kinesiologist and resilience trainer and keynote speaker, Amanda believes through flexibility, we can build and strengthen our resilience. At the age of 24, Amanda was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, or MS, a debilitating, incurable disease that renders its sufferers prone to paralysis, nerve damage, and in some cases, even blindness. Paralyzed down the entire left side of her body, unable to wash, walk, or feed herself, Amanda was given only a 50% chance of ever walking again. With no choice but to succeed, Amanda channeled her energy into a positive force. With a mountain of determination, the aid of Eastern and Western medicines, Amanda astounded everyone by not only walking unaided, but running again. At age 29, Amanda discovered that a flexible mindset impacts everything that matters: our body's ability to repair, how happy and resilient we are, and how connected we feel. Since her recovery, bringing together informed thinking from the fields of neuroscience, positive psychology, and nutrition to create a portfolio of products and services that promote healing, health, and inspiration through mindfulness and grounded thinking. Amanda Campbell's programs are designed to maximize resilience and health. Welcome, Amanda. Oh my goodness.
I forgot. I sent you the long one. Whoops. I should have sent you a short bio.
It's so funny. And I feel the same way whenever you're like sitting there through your own intro going, oh, like cringing. But it's such a beautiful story for you. You know, you've heard it a lot of times, but I think that for everyone who's about to spend, half an hour with you.
Yeah.
I think it's really great to have that up front and really hear a bit about what you've walked through, because there's a few reasons I wanted to have you on the show. One, I think that this resilience is so important for entrepreneurs, women, kind of anyone who is trying to do anything in the world,
yes.
And move forward. But, and to bring in, that inspiration to push through hard times and different ways that we can be looking after ourselves and all of that. So tell us, that was kind of the official version. Do you want to walk us through what that was like for you? Like where
did it all start?
Yes.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me on the show. I think what you're doing is super fantastic. No, it's an honor to be here. So thank you. So I'm a twin, and I'm a kinesiologist, and I'm a mother to my pug, Henry. And I'm a motivational speaker and resilience trainer. So I do lots of different things. I like variety. So half my month I've got my shoes off in my private practice in a more healing mode, and the other half of the month I've got my heels on and I'm out doing corporates, and I really like it like that. And now in our not modern day, but in our COVID way of living, a lot of it's behind my camera doing, I had to digitalize everything last year, but that's turned out to be a wonderful thing, because only last week I was doing my resilience program with a finance company, and I got to do it with 90 people Australia wide. I would not be able to do that in person. So I think we've all gone through lots of change, and that's what my work is all about: how to master change with flexibility. And I learned that a long time ago. I guess the story starts back when I was 24, and I'm 41 now. So when I was 24, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and obviously that was a huge shock, and it turned my world completely upside down. And from that moment on, I began to focus on what I didn't want and what I was scared of that might happen, that I might end up disabled, bedridden, or worse. And when we're stressed, we tend to focus on what we don't want and worst case scenarios. We're stuck in our heads, the monkey mind. We're overthinking the past or over analyzing the future. And I think we've all been there, regardless of whether it's an MS diagnosis or not. When we're overworked, overstressed, overtired, we get really stressed and stuck in our heads, and our focus is not on the positive, and therefore we're not solution focused. And this is how it applies on a business sense. But yeah, when I was, it just turned my world upside down. But prior to that, I have memories now of, I don't think I really ever believed in myself enough when I was young. And before, around that age at 24, I was in the fashion industry, and I worked behind the scenes as a personal assistant to some designers, and that was a great skill set to learn. And before that, my twin sister and I, we were musicians, and we sang and wrote our own music and albums, and we loved the music industry and took it really seriously all through our teens and 20s. And then I changed my career in my 30s into the wellness industry. And that's because after my diagnosis at 24, 5 years later, believing that I wasn't going to be okay, super stressed, frightened about my future, my body started to mirror how emotionally paralyzed I felt, and my worst fears did come true. And 5 years later, the entire left-hand side of my body became paralyzed. Washing and feeding myself became my most difficult tasks of the day. And I'm a very, very driven person. So it really was a lot for me to have to stop. But obviously being too busy and I'm very driven, but when it comes from fear and trying too hard, it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. And so it took me, they thought I would never walk again. And it was a huge, huge time in my life. And I lived in hospital for 2 months, and I was living with and doing rehab with people that had been in car accidents and strokes, and they had pins in their neck. And I just reevaluated my life completely. And I love the quote, lose what needs to be lost to find what needs to be found. And a part of me had to die to be reborn again, to discover a whole new version of myself. And as I started to become a whole new version of myself in that rebuild, my body started to change. And my ability to repair started to change. And that's where I discovered how flexibility really builds resilience. And we get so fixated on ideas and stories that we tell ourselves and what we believe. And I really, after everything I've gone through, I'm a firm believer that what we believe is what matters. Because, when I was stressed, I focused on what I didn't want, and I became worse. I became more sick and unwell. But then as soon as, so I was living in rehabilitation, I was still paralyzed, and the doctors were tweaking my medication, trying to reduce the inflammation in my brain. Nothing worked for ages. But there was one day where everything changed. And that was, I remember there was a day where all of my mates and my twin sister put me in my wheelchair, and they wheeled me out of the hospital to have dinner across the road at a restaurant. And we just laughed and laughed and forgot about the 24/7 hell that was my reality just for a moment. And I remember just being so present and in the moment, because I missed just being normal and just enjoying those moments with my friends. Because when we're stressed, we are not present. We're typically overthinking the past or the future. But when we can come back into the present moment and we're more calm, there's a shift that happens in the body. And I came back to my room, and something very, very special happened that night. My toe moved for the first time on my paralyzed foot. And it was in that moment I found hope. And as a result, I started to focus my energy differently. I began to focus on what I wanted instead of what I didn't want. And that dramatically changed how fast my body started to repair afterwards. And it was mind-blowing. And within 6 weeks, I was not just walking, but running again, taking a very balanced approach. I had a wonderful team of doctors, neurophysiotherapists, and a kinesiologist started working on me, which is a modality that works on the muscles through the meridians of Chinese medicine, similar to the acupuncture system. I took a very balanced eats meets west approach. And it really, for me, it maximized my recovery. And so what I learned was that, what we believe is what matters, and how we think and how we feel and what we believe dictates the biochemistry we fire in our bodies. And we are either in a survival, fight or flight stress response, or freeze, response, or we are in growth and repair, and we're in one or the other pathway. And so I started to understand that what I had to do to continue to repair from my paralysis was I needed to give my mind and body the best environment to maximize growth and repair instead of survival and stress. And there were many layers to unpack for that. Structurally, biochemically, I had to clean up my body. Emotionally, I had to get to the bottom of what stresses me out. And it's not just typically back in the day, we would go into a fight or flight response from getting out of danger, running from a snake or a tiger. Whereas in our modern day of living, we perceive threat from a lack of finances, interpersonal relationship difficulties, public speaking, like all sorts of different modern day problems. But what I believe is having a goal is not enough to make it happen. What we believe is what matters. And when our goals and desires align with what we believe about ourselves and what can be possible for us, there's more harmony in the body and we can make it happen. We can see possibility around us. But for many of us, we have goals and it doesn't align with what we're believing. And that can also push us into that stress response. And that's what most of my work is about. Like at my private practice, it's how I work with my clients, no matter what they're going through, whether it's disease, pain in the body, anxiety, depression. It's always about how do I get to the bottom of their inner conflict and exposing that, which is often subconscious.
So much to dig into, Amanda. Amazing. Thank you so much for
talk about.
Thank you for sharing your story. I'd love to learn more about flexibility builds resilience. What does that mean to you? And how do you explain that to the people that you're working with?
Well, when we're stressed, we're very rigid and we're not solution focused. We're narrow-minded. Here's a great analogy. Carolyn Meese is a wonderful lecturer and she's from the States, and she talks about this perfect analogy, and I'll use it now. If you think of a tall building, when we're stressed, we can see what we are seeing from the ground floor, where all you can see is what's in front of you. You've got a more narrow-minded view of the situation and your life, and we're very reactive. And our reactions can actually show us what we're believing, right? But then as we grow and we become stronger and we have more courage and we can push ourselves out of our comfort zone, we move from the ground floor to the first floor, and then to the second floor, and then the third, until we reach the penthouse. And that you're in the same life, same situations, but you're seeing everything from a higher perspective. And from this elevated and more flexible mindset, we can access more elevated emotions such as forgiveness, kindness, compassion, courage. Whereas when we're stressed, we're more rigid and we access more lower, denser emotions such as shame, guilt, anger. And we're not the best version of ourselves. We're not promoting repair, and we definitely are not open to possibility.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So then how can we do that? Because it sounds great, but for those of us who are, running a business, dealing with clients, dealing with staff, potentially dealing with family, all of everything that comes with owning your own business, being an entrepreneur, how can we rise? How can we get up to that penthouse?
We're very used to washing and exercising our bodies. So how do you wash and exercise your mind? Our minds are often forgotten. So it's about capturing that elevated state, the more flexible state. I believe our morning and evening routines are super important. And then I have methods that I give for what we can do throughout the day. So we really want to give our mind and body the best environment to be more flexible, where we can see from the penthouse rather than from the ground floor. And so my pillars of health are mind, body, food, and connection, which are obvious ways to clean up our optimize our health. And also our performance in our personal lives and in our professional lives. Because when you're promoting growth and repair, you're also promoting performance. So all the lessons I learned walking again then translated across to how I built my businesses in when I was in my 30s. And then I started to realize, as a CEO of my own company, and being in a fast-paced startup that had funding from investors and all sorts of expectations, I realized I had to perform on top of my game. And I also very quickly realized the lessons I learned rebuilding my mind and body also applied there. So with mindset, what I do is I empty and wash my mind with a journaling technique. I love journaling. It sounds really simple, but if you can get out of your head and get it onto paper, it's like closing the tabs in the mind. Also, only what you bring into your awareness is what you can change. And when we're stressed, we tend to suppress things and push them out of our awareness. So journaling is a great tool to organize our thoughts, to get out of our heads, where we're going to drop more into our hearts, where we're kinder to ourselves, more compassionate towards others. We can see from other people's points of view. It's just a great way to wash the mind. And then we can create that elevated state in the morning. I also follow that up with a meditation. Every morning and night I'm journaling and meditating. And then what we eat is really important. When we eat better, we're going to feel better. And, just we want to optimize whole foods, green leafy vegetables, deeply colored fruits and vegetables, fiber, hydration. Obviously, focus on what to up, not just what to eliminate. Obviously, sugar, processed foods, but just, fill your cupboards and your kitchen with beautiful whole foods. And, where we source our foods, I think really is what matters and makes it nutrient dense. And moving the body. So, when I'm super stressed, I'll go for more, if I'm going through something in my life that's stressing me out, or I'm in my head, I'll go for restorative exercise, such as Tai Chi or walking or, slow yoga. Even Pilates, I find, can be quite restorative. But if I'm feeling really good and energized and not as stressed, I'll go for the more cardio. So they're my pillars of health: mind, body, food, and connection. And so I connect with meditation, but also, connection is also how you connect with yourself, how you connect with the people in your life, and how you're aligning your goals with what you believe. And so journaling is another great way to actually identify, that alignment, if that makes sense.
And how do we, if we notice that our goals and what we believe are not in alignment, and potentially our goals are, shooting for the moon, but we still have this subconscious belief about our ability or whatever it is, how do we begin to elevate that, our beliefs? How can we change those?
To be in our most malleable and flexible state. So another thing you can do is you can catch yourself when you're reacting. I use a wristband that I wear, or it could be any prop. It could be a pineapple. I've got a podcast called The Pineapple Effect, all about this. But if we can catch our reactions, we can start to identify, I'm reacting here to a situation, something's getting under my skin. And I ask myself, what am I believing about this? Why is this really getting under my skin? So for example, let's say there's person A and person B, and they have the same morning, right? So they wake up, person A wakes up, they're going through a bit of stress in their lives. As a result, their confidence is not as high. They're not believing in themselves, nor what can be possible for them. They wake up, they're late to work, and they lose their keys. This is how they might react. Oh, of course I lost my keys, not another thing today, right? Losing the keys is just a trigger, making true what they're already believing, that nothing is really working out for me. I'm in the dumps. I'm in a rut. Person B is going through a very different time. You've got a lot of confidence and self-esteem. They're believing that things are really working out for them. They're making things happen for themselves. They've got a bit more forward momentum in their lives. They wake up, they lose their keys, they're late to work. This is how they might respond. Oh crap, I lost my keys. Oh well, I'll get an Uber and I'll sort it out later. You're more solution focused. It doesn't get under your skin. It's because it's not making that belief true. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So I think, catching ourselves in the moment when we're getting stressed and diving deeper into what that's about. The only modality I've ever found that helps me to understand what I'm truly believing and identifying any beliefs or stories that I want to change my mind about is kinesiology, because it really gets into that subconscious brain.
So how does that, can you talk about that for a little while?
So I'm a huge, I'm just so passionate about kinesiology, because not only did it help me walk again on a physical level, I went off and studied it, and I found a course that was a fusion of sports science and kinesiology. So hence I'm a sports kinesiologist. And kinesiology is a modality that works with the body on a holistic level. So structurally, the fascia, the bones, the muscles, tendons, ligaments, also the biochemistry of the body. So blood to our cells to hormones. Think of all the biochemistry that happens in the body, neurotransmitters, how the brain fires. And then emotionally, our body is, we go through so many emotions, but in Chinese medicine, we understand that we connect muscle groups to emotions. So for example, if you're stuck in your head and you've got a bit of the monkey mind going on, you might find that you get a really sore neck and shoulders, and that might be something that's recurring for you. And if you find you've got a lingering sore neck and shoulders and a massage isn't really cutting it, which is a physical relief, like the trigger point, you might need to dive deeper and clear something emotionally there. Or you might need to ramp up some nutrients that you're deficient in. And, so kinesiology looks at the person on a really holistic level. And electromagnetically, that's the chi. So whether you're putting needles into a body, which is more acupuncture, or a kinesiologist will move the chi using touch or a few different methods, but we don't use needles. If you think of energy is your most malleable state. And so if you can move chi, which is connected to your biochemistry, which is also connected to your body physically and emotionally, it's pretty amazing what you can do when you move blocked energy. If you think of blood clots in the body, and then all of a sudden the blood clot releases, and then all of a sudden there's flow back in, it can really reorganize the mind and body. And it gets to the bottom of, stress that we suppress.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like a very individual process.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is. There's not one size that fits all. It really, we all get stressed for different reasons. We've all got different experiences, very unique lives. There are some similar patterns that I notice all of the time, but we're all so uniquely different. So I think the best thing that we can always do for ourselves to alleviate stress, to promote repair, and to perform better at work is to get to the bottom of any inner conflict that you might be having. And you know what that feels like, this background stress where you just feel like you're not making things happen for yourself, you're pushing too hard, and you're not really getting any flow, or there might be a fear of criticism, so you're not pushing yourself enough to go for that promotion, or that project, or and so if you can get to the bottom of what you're believing using flexibility, which is what Bending Like Bamboo is all about, you can start to question those stories. And some of them are very old and they need to be revisited. And that's what I learned on my journey, is I had very old beliefs that suited me at the time when I was 8 or 15. And we're not really taught to go and revisit those stories that we tell ourselves again, and to challenge them and to change our minds about them. It was only when I walked again that I started to, I saw what I was capable of. After going through big adversity, we become very present, and we shed what's not important very quickly in our lives, which is actually a gift. And then when we're more present and focused, we can really identify what really matters to us. And going through adversity, we discover what we're made of. And that's how we grow from the ground floor to the first floor to the second floor, until we get to a point where we've mastered change and we're not scared of it anymore. We're going to push ourselves more. We're going to get more out of our lives, and we're going to grow spiritually as well.
Yeah, so true. I love how you framed that. I think that's really helpful and thought-provoking for people. So when you start to work with someone, when you get a new client, I think my baby's sneezing. He's asleep.
And I wanted to say bless you before too.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, me sneezing with mute on.
All good.
So when you start working with someone, what does that process look like? What's that initial kind of step to looking inward and working with, if someone doesn't have access to a kinesiologist, or someone just wants to kind of start walking along this journey by themselves, before, if they're feeling anxious about letting someone in this deep, what are some first steps or journal prompts, or I don't know, you tell me, what's those first
I
steps where
think
we can start to look inward?
first just identify what's going on in your life personally. Ask yourself, am I feeling tired? Is my mental health affected at the moment? Am I feeling pain in my body? Do I have inflammation going on? How am I connecting to myself? How do I feel within myself? Am I connecting in my relationships right now? How do I deal with stress? How am I managing stress in my life? How am I dealing with change at the moment? And then you can also ask yourself, how's the health of my culture at work? Do I feel like I'm productive? Am I hitting my targets? How's the bottom line of my business going? Am I feeling creative and innovative? And so if you answer to no to any of those questions, my advice is to create a new routine for yourself in the morning to create a more flexible mindset. And of course, that is when we are much more present and calm and in the moment, where we tend to focus on what we want, the positive, and we're more solution focused. Simply by staring at a tree or looking into your child's eyes just for a moment, or my dog, this can actually bring us back into the moment very, very quickly. But we lived in such a fast-paced life, we often don't have a lot of time for that. So schedule it in. And how you wake up is going to set up your mindset for the day. So give journaling a go, and slip in a meditation. A meditation can be as quick as 3 minutes, or it can be as long as 45 to an hour. It's totally up to you. And even a short meditation can be the very difference that you make in creating that shift in your mind. Because with a more flexible mindset, we can challenge our stories, what we're thinking and what we're believing about ourselves and what can be possible for us. And that's really when we can create change in our bodies and in our lives.
Yeah, so true. And I think we really don't make that time to look inward.
Yep,
often.
all the answers lie within. I make my best decisions on my meditation mat. And so I'll go through a breathing exercise, then I'll scan my body and all my organs, thinking of warm oil that's nourishing me. And then I'll place myself on top of a penthouse or a mountain, and I'll sit in total silence, accessing my higher self, asking, what is it that I need to understand about the situation to move through it? What is it that I need to know to let this go, or whatever it is? And you'd be surprised, if you train yourself to be quiet in the mind, your spirit will whisper to you. You get guidance, and it's you. That guidance is you. All the answers lay within.
So how do you explain to your clients the link between that and changes in their body that they might want to see?
So if you create change in your mind, our minds are absolutely connected to our bodies. So, for example, and I do this in my movement program. If a client has are they going through intense sadness, maybe from a death or the ending of a relationship, or they're experiencing perhaps any guilt. This is the lung and large intestine meridians that are associated, and they're all the muscles around the lower back. And that's a typical pain that I see all the time, sore lower back. And so if we can identify what the sadness is about, and we can bring that into our awareness, or the client's awareness, and they can review what that's about, and notice what they need to let go of. Because when we master the art of letting go, we create more space in our minds and bodies, and then things can flow. And we know what to walk towards. We know what to walk away from. We don't feel as bogged down. And funnily enough, when you move through emotions like sadness and grief and the ability to let go, in Chinese medicine, that's connected to the health of those muscles around the lower back, and the pain can release from identifying and moving through that emotionally. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think it does make sense. I think it's language that not all of us are familiar with.
Yes.
But I think that as you describe it, I'm sure many people can think about their own experiences and see the correlation, or be able to actually identify with what you're saying. So Yes, I think that you explained it really clearly.
And I think we all have the experienced feeling that mind-body connection with emotions from, if we're nervous, sometimes we need to, we pee all the time. Or if we get really angry, sometimes, or if we want a situation to quickly pass our life and we're overwhelmed, often this is associated with diarrhea. So it's just another more straightforward examples of how our emotions are connected to our bodily functions.
Yeah, and I think all of us can, when we remember something we should have done and that like sinking feeling in our gut, like I think all of us can think about different ways that our body tell us how we feel. Like,
and the other thing is shame. Like so many of us experience shame for lots of different reasons. And shame is a very self-attacking emotion. It's the opposite to an outward directed emotion such as anger. And anger is a great emotion to push us away from feeling sadness that we're not ready to look at and deal with. So we use anger instead, much easier. But shame is an inward directed emotion. And when I see that at my private practice, it's often very much out of the client's awareness. And it's also very much associated with stuff going on in their gut, like poor gut health, because it creates a very damp environment, which is a very Chinese medicine term, in the gut when we're experiencing shame. So on a structural, biochemical, emotional, and spiritual level, our body is so connected.
yeah. And how can we bring ourselves back to be present during the day?
I use props like a wristband, or I have a golden pineapple that sits on my desk. Where is it? Where's it gone? Oh, it's up there. And it's just any prop that reminds you to check in with yourself. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be a ring. It could be a bracelet. I have a wristband that says, I'm enough on it. And it just reminds me to check in with the present moment, which is our most creative state. And it allows me to create that elevated mindset. But I think when I'm doing it all, like my mind, I'm moving my body, I'm stretching, I'm eating the right food, I've got plenty of hydration, I'm connecting with the people in my life, I've identified any inner conflict, I'm resolving that, and my goals, I'm starting to make them happen, I'm believing in myself, I'm making things happen for myself. That's when a flow state arises,
And how can we begin to believe in ourselves more? Because I see this a lot with the women specifically that I work with. A lot of the time it's women who want to have their own businesses, but potentially think that that's not for them, or they can't do that, and that other people can do that, but they can't. How can we cultivate that?
Mastering change, learning how to deal with stress better, and learning how to master change. Mastering change and not seeing it as scary can be the biggest gift you give to yourself. When we go through difficult times of adversity, which is what I believe resilience is all about, the ability to dig down deep when life gets tough, when you want to give in, when you feel like you can't go on. Who are you in those moments? And who you become walking through that, not around it, through it, is how you start to believe in yourself. It was only when I went through the most difficult of times in my life, who I became coming out on the other end of that, helped me to be more flexible, adaptable, and courageous. And it's just like even with business, when you go through stuff and you get punched in the face and, all the stuff that happens, whether you've got your own business or whether you're running someone else's, you get up again and you get up again and you become more experienced and you know how to handle that situation. There's no other way around it. You've just got to go through adversity. Another tip is do something that scares you every day, because it helps you to become more resilient and it will push you out of your comfort zone. And then when big scary things come up, you're already practicing challenging yourself. Do the hardest task on your to-do list first. I think that's really important, is our ability to challenge ourselves. It's the only way through.
Yeah, I think I get asked that a lot about confidence and being on camera and things. I'm like,
there's no other way than just doing it over and over.
You just have to do it.
Yeah.
And it's the action that builds the confidence, not you get confidence and then you do the thing. No, you do the thing so that you feel confident that you can do the
and if
thing.
you create a flexible mindset in the morning and you're really like learning how to be kinder to yourself, You know, of course you're going to stuff up the first time. Of course your first podcast is going to be crap. Of course your first workshop or webinar is going to be all over the place. So what? It doesn't matter. It's just like how you manage the stress of that and how kind you are, how authentic and real you are. You know, if you don't care what people think, they're not going to care as much either. When I started to accept that I had MS, you know, everyone around me started to as well, you know. When you start to believe in yourself, people show up for you. It's all the same thing. So learning how to master change and how you manage your stress is the most important thing, and what we believe is what matters. And that's what will fire either growth and repair pathways or survival and stress.
Awesomely said.
Bottom line.
That's like the mic drop moment.
Yeah, it is.
So Amanda, how can people learn more about you? How can people come and follow your content? Where do they go?
So I have an online course, and I have a book coming soon, but
Exciting.
yeah, I know I'm still getting there with publishing it, but so I have an online course, and you can book yourself in for a one-on-one kinesiology session on my website benlikebamboo.com. But for workplace wellness, I have another website, which is my name, amandacampbell.com.au, and I do wellbeing, resilience and mind, body, food connection workshops with businesses in person and on Zoom.
So good. Well, thank you so much for spending the time with us, for taking the time to help us with this, because I think that this is such a big issue. We all need to be resilient. I think that's kind of one of the number one things we are going to need as an entrepreneur, because you're right, we are going to get smacked in the face, we're going to fall down, we're going to have to get up again, and having these skills is only going to be more important. So thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us and for giving us some really actionable strategies and actionable ways that we can begin to move forward.
It's really my pleasure, and thank you so much for having me on your show. And it's strip back, do less, you know, create more space. And you don't realize how adaptable and resilient you already are, you know, like there's a fire that's just got to be ignited within you. And just as you said, you just got to go through it, and you just got to do it. And who you become on the other side of that is what's going to change your mind about what's possible for you.
Thanks, Amanda.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Impact Business Show. 2 things you should know before you go. First, come and join the party. I'm live with free marketing training in the Social Marketing Method Facebook group every single week. That's where you can ask questions and get the answers you need to simplify your strategy and amplify your income. Go to annalisewarn.com/group to join and come and network with an incredible community of like-minded business owners. Now, second, if you have got any value from this episode, please rate, review, and subscribe, and share it out on your socials. Your support helps us reach more purpose-driven entrepreneurs and increase our impact in the world. Thank you, and I will see you next week. Bye.